Colonel Miri, if I could begin with you. Firstly, welcome back to Global Lens. Now, it's been almost a month since this war began. Israel now says we have cut the Gaza Strip into two. Could you please explain to our viewers what exactly that means and where the war is currently poised?
From the beginning, and as I was listening to your very interesting introduction, I just like to say this war did not erupt. This war was started. It was started in a very specific way with a very specific all-out attack. What Israel has been doing inside the Gaza Strip from the beginning, and more so with the ground operation, is to get to the Hamas terrorists. They base themselves in their pre-plan, in what they prepared, not in the last few weeks, not in the last few months, but for years. They've planned a defense system which is built both above ground, where there are, as you've said, 2.3 million civilians, and their underground subterranean arena. What the Israeli military is doing is getting to these two different areas that Hamas terror fighters are fighting from. This is their defense system. They did that horrific attack, and now they are using both the 2.3 million civilians and the 241 Israeli people and people from all around the world as their defense, as their get out of jail card. This is the most criminal act you can think of. I'm going to call it for the moment the genocidal Hamas attack. And what we're trying to do is to get to the terrorists, to their capabilities. That means going into these cities and going underneath them. It is a very challenging arena.
Colonel Miri, of course, nobody can contest that what happened in Israel on the 7th of October is too horrifying for even words. It was barbarity at its worst. However, here's a retired Lieutenant General of the Indian Army who says, look, India, for example, is also a country that has been at the receiving end of terror. But unfortunately, this is something that we've had to battle for decades now. Not months or years, but decades. That is the unfortunate reality. And he says, in a war such as this, there is no such thing as a complete victory. Therefore, I'm going to ask you this. I know that from day one, Israel has said we're going to finish Hamas. But I'm still going to ask you this pointed question. What would a quote-unquote complete victory look like for Israel, and at what cost is it likely to come? What time frame are we looking at?
So first of all, I greatly appreciate listening to both the Lieutenant General and the other Israeli. And I want to say the following when it comes to the terms of complete victory. There is no such thing in any kind of war, anywhere at any time. And Israel has been fighting against terrorists, sir, for our entire existence. We've been fighting both against countries and states. When you mentioned 67 and 73, that was countries that attacked Israel. And we have been fighting for almost 50 years against terrorists. And here I am going to take a point. What does it mean to demolish Hamas capabilities? We've never said that we would erase Hamas. We've never said we'll erase the Palestinians. I am together with the general, and I, Miri, would like to arrive at a peaceful resolution with the Palestinians. But please let us all separate between the murderous terror organization called Hamas, who have never wanted to arrive at a peaceful resolution, sir. They were against the Palestinian Authority. They were against all of the different decisions that were made in the 1990s, for all of the years. They have been against it. They call for the destruction of Israel. That's Hamas. And what we want to do when we talk about erasing or eradicating is to get to as much of their terror military capability. They are a terror army. That isn't easy, and I don't think that we will eradicate it. What worries me more is when people don't make that distinction between Hamas that calls for the destruction of the state of Israel, and that's the attack that they did, and we need to go after the capabilities, the infrastructure, and to get to our hostages, these people that were taken out of their bed Saturday morning from 9 months through 87 years old, and between arriving at a resolution. Let's get rid of Hamas. When I say get rid of it, destroy those capabilities. For me, victory, if I want to end this issue, the victory is that the Hamas leadership will know that it lost, that the Palestinian people will understand that this path of going on a genocidal terror attack is not the way to arrive at a peaceful resolution.
Okay, it is my job to play the devil's advocate, and I'm going to do that. You said something interesting, Colonel Eisen. I have this question for you. You saying, please, draw a distinction between the Hamas and Palestinian civilians. That's what we as Israelis have done. Actually, ma'am, to be honest with you, that is what the rest of the world indeed has done. What they are saying is that all Palestinians are not Hamas. The 2.3 million residents of Gaza are not all Hamas. The over 10,000 Palestinians who have been killed in the Israeli counteroffensive are not all Hamas. And most certainly, the 4,800 children who have been killed in the Israeli counteroffensive were not Hamas. And when you say that the attack on your territory was a genocidal one, now the cruel irony is that the exact same allegation is being leveled against you, that it is Israel which is now carrying out a genocide of the Palestinian people. How would you respond to that?
Respond?
Yes.
My heart goes out to any child killed. My heart goes out to all of the civilians. My heart goes out to anybody anywhere who is thrust into this situation. I hold Hamas responsible. You, for some reason, do not. Hamas built an entire genocidal attack to be protected by their civilians. We have been telling civilians for weeks, as you said before, to go south. We have been isolating the northern portion and consistently, not over the last 2 days, telling the civilians, not to you in India, in Arabic, into their telephones, into the different aspects, go south to safe places. 250,000 Israelis are dislocated right now as rockets are fired in. The government of Israel has tried to protect us from that kind of terror. When we look at it and we put it on that same aspect, Israel never targets civilians. The Hamas, the ones who were built into that population, and that's why it is so challenging, have built themselves inside there, are in that area. And I have to say, if you and me, the two of us, two women here, allow Hamas to do a genocidal attack and to use their civilians as their own human shields, and for them to succeed, I really fear what that can do in other places in the world. This is an example that you do not want to have succeed. This is not something that you want to have succeed in any way. And my heart goes out for every child killed at any time. We have to live with them. We cry over them. I'd like to hear that same idea from all of the people in the arena. And what I've heard over the last 3 weeks has been horrific outbreak that this is about Israel. And that's taking it out of the context of what we're talking about here. And I really do hope that we can bridge that gap there, because for me, that's at the heart of the challenge. Separate Hamas from the Palestinians. Free the Palestinians from this deadly Hamas. And that's not just better for Israel and for the Palestinians, that is better for the entire world.
Now, this is where the problem lies, a battle of the narratives. And I want to just place on record, ma'am, that I am no apologist for a terror organization like Hamas. I would be the first person, in fact, I have on every show that I've done in the last 1 month, strongly condemned their barbarism. And I believe that what they've done is absolutely inhumane and justice must be done to those monsters, to those beasts who did what they did to those 1,400 innocent Israelis.
How would you do it?
Colonel Aysin, your thoughts on what the Lieutenant General from the Indian Army is saying. He says that both sides seem to have unrealistic targets. I wonder what your thoughts on that are. Two, I have another question for you. What do you make of the fact that the US military has made a very rare announcement that a guided missile submarine is now deployed in the Middle East? Is it a message of deterrence aimed at Iran? And do you believe that this will be enough to prevent a further widening of this conflict, or is it still likely to become a multi-front war for Israel given the challenge from at least Syria and Lebanon?
So two very interesting and rather different questions. I'll start with the one and go to the second. I found what the Lieutenant General was saying very interesting. I do think that at the end, it's very hard when you're inside and you're emotional, and the events that happened here were unprecedented, to be able to look at them in the way that he was presenting. I do think that at the end, both sides, but here I want to define what both sides are. And in this case, I think that what Israel is trying to say is that we are acting in a way that we have not in the past against some of that terror infrastructure, most of it in a way that we never have before. And the casualties which go into my heart are a horrible, horrible way that I don't know how to get around right now. But he's absolutely right. At the end, at some stage, there will be a ceasefire. At the end, at some stage, we will need to sit down, but we're going to be sitting down with Palestinians who are not the Hamas. And that I can say right now. So that's a way to look at it. As we said, 2.3 million people there. Let's see what the alternatives are. And I don't think that makes it any easier. When it comes to the United States military deployment in the Middle East, and this connects also to your opening, that extensive opening about Secretary of State Blinken's hopping through the Middle East and going to so many different countries. Everybody, and I would say even including India, are very, very worried and wary that this Israel-Hamas conflict, the war that Hamas started, should become something broader. And in its own way, I can say it's not that Israel wants it to be broader, but I want to tell you that while we've been talking, Hezbollah up north, our northern border, has not been quiet from October 7th. Rockets, missiles, anti-tank missiles have constantly been fired from Lebanon into Israel, both by Hezbollah and by other Palestinian terrorist groups that are in Lebanon. So I'm just saying everybody in the world wants to contain it. Part of the containment is, by the words that you were using before, the deterrence. And I think that a nuclear submarine is all about that it has the Tomahawk missiles. It's making a statement. This is something where it's saying, Iran, watch out with the use you're doing of your proxies. And your proxies can be the Houthis in Yemen, who, I hate to say this on Indian TV, but the missiles that they fired at Israel in the last 2 weeks can reach India too. Just watch out. That's the Houthis in Yemen. The Iraqi Hezbollah Shiite proxies that have been attacking U.S. bases all over the Middle Eastern area. And of course, Hezbollah that has been armed by Iran over decades and has 10 times the terror army capabilities that Hamas has. So there's no question that that's in the name of the game. And we don't want it to expand, but none of us want to be able to live right now within this area where you have a terror army that has 10 times more than what Hamas has. So these are the challenges we face right now. United States is clear cut at the governmental level, at the military level, of being part of it. They're not the only ones. You showed before the EU in that sense, in that humanitarian support. As I said, I want to help the civilians, but both the Europeans and different countries all are on board in that sense, in understanding that we need to withstand the expansion of this conflict, and that Hezbollah is to a large degree testing the waters. And if they join in, that's already a whole different degree of war.
All right. So in addition to the Hamas that Israelis are fighting right now, there are challenges on the Syrian front, on the Yemen front, on the Lebanon front, and then of course there is Iran, because most Israelis seem to believe that Iran was perhaps in many ways the architect of those terror attacks that took place on the 7th of October.